Well, thank you, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. The appetizer to the main course, which is Priya Paul. So everyone that know her have the force of nature. So I'm here to warm everyone up to her excitement. And so quickly, I think just to talk, I asked to talk briefly about the work. So not a lot of chance to talk about what they are. But because many of you don't really know me and my work, so I'm just going to go through very quickly, and hopefully you have a chance to ask questions if something piques your interest after. So I start here. I was born in Thailand, educated in Japan, and then work now all over the world, as you can see here. I in a way define culture because we talked about culture flourishing today. The two main countries that I may be close with are Thailand and Japan. Right, I'm looking at the culture itself. Thailand is that little guy in the middle seat in coach. You have China and you have India, right? That's why we call it Indochina, right? And when you're a tiny little person between two giants, you learn to behave. You learn to keep your elbows. You learn to kind of pet your taste. The culture represents that. We see many things in Thai, which is, that looks so much like Indian. There's so much like Chinese, right? We kind of survive through this sense of diplomatic fluidity between the giants. Japan, on the other side, is spread out in a back seat on his robe on an island, right? So therefore, he has all the time in the world to abstract, to think about what culture is and whatever it is. It's isolated, difficult to conquer because it's so far out. So that's really how it kind of, of course, it's such a commonplace, simple to do, but my take is, looking at the food, and food and architecture is another subject I will talk on a later time if you have me back, but it's a very fundamental to that. But talked about that, back to the seats on the plane, Japanese cuisine is all about clarity, about refinement, about abstraction. It has a time to refine things and mixing and refining. Thai food and maybe Indian food is all about mixing diversities together, about improvising, about harmony of these things that are normally not seen together. We all know that because we eat this every day, spicy, sour, and things like that. While the Japanese food is aimed for that depth, that clarity of the ingredients, Thai food really look at mixing things together and we get bored very quickly. So therefore, this mix is important. Anyway, why I'm talking about that is because my work is really deal a lot with culture. And I do feel that as designers in this part of the world, we really have a strong potential and responsibility because I think that culture of a whole in general is moving from the exclusive to sushi to an inclusive pad thai. And what I mean by that is that the 21st century will be about mixing, about understanding, harmonizing the conflicts, creating empathy, creating harmony among different ideas and different thoughts, and how we can get along. That's part of that. Anyway, quickly about the firm. This is our office. We're based mostly in New York and Los Angeles. This is Los Angeles here. This is New York here. We have all kinds of things, architecture, museums. Again, the idea of creating these. So these are the workshops that we have done. They mentioned the work we have done, so I just quickly go through them. The first one is the project we're doing at the Louvre, which is a new department, which interestingly, it really going to make the Louvre very different. It's not going to be as Eurocentric as it used to. It started really talking about the antiquities from Roman to the birth of Judaism, the birth of Christianity, and the birth of Islam, leading up to that around 600 years of talking about that, and the Louvre will be at the forefront of presenting that vision. And this is something that they learned from having the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, understanding how things come together and tell the story of civilizations together rather than in separate departments. So we are very honored to be the partner to design these new experiences around 8,000 square meters in the original Louvre, which directly connected from the pyramid itself. This is part of that. In this case, you will see, early Christian work with early Islam and many together in one space. You can see the similarities and other conversation. This is the Roman wing. Again, the other one, not MoMA, but actually at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, we're doing the Rockefeller wing, which opened this May coming up. We've been working on it for 8 years. So the idea, again, is talking about empathy and how you represent cultures in a museum context, allow everyone to understand and develop a sense of understanding and empathy. So this is what the work we've done. Again, simple. We got everything changed, all the glass walls, changed the architecture of the museum, creating very distinctive section for different wings, different department. The Rockefeller Wing has Africa, Oceania, and Americas material, which is close to 80% of the world in this 4,000 square meters. And so it took the Met a long time to accept that as become part of the art museum. So it's how far we have come from somewhat of a Eurocentric museum typology to a real universal encyclopedia museum. And there's a lot of work to be done, but the idea of representing different cultures around the world in a museum context is an ongoing work that we need to celebrate. Again, working closely with the curators, placing most of the objects in the collection here, construction, again, leading up to the opening in May. Again, this is a museum that's under construction, opening next year, late next year. This is called Elmi, which is the Museum of Knowledge and the Future in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This is a direct commission from the Crown Prince to create, it actually will be the biggest museum in the kingdom. And so the idea is, and this is also maybe the first public building in Saudi that allow men and women to go together. This is a new generation of thinking of what the future of the kingdom would look like. And so we won a competition around 5 years ago. Again, it's close to 200,000 square meters of everything, art, science, technology, learning, entertainment, you name it. The globe itself is made of solar panels, which we work with a company in Germany that's actually transparent with colors. Half of the globe is actually outdoor, so have indoor-outdoor condition. The plinth that you see, which is green, is actually the landscape of the future where people will learn to make agriculture. It's something that's new to the kingdom. Learn about how you create food, how to bring different kind of things to, which is again a new education, new chapter in that kingdom as well. The interior of it, go up all the way. So, museum in Saudi have a lot of roles, not only just art and science, but entertainment, family time together, pastime, meditation, many things. So this is another project in Russia, which right now is stopped, but hopefully start because of the Ukraine war. It's an opera house that combined the Philharmonic, ballet school, and symphony all together in the big room. Perm, which is the third city in Russia, is known for its ballet. Many ballerinas are from there, so this is the new hub for that. And so we started before the Ukraine war and now stopped, so hopefully come back after the world get into peace again. And that. We have a lot of projects. I'm just going to go very quickly. This is Harvard Art Museum, so we work closely with Renzo Piano and the museum team to reconfigure all the gallery design. Again, we place every object, talking about museum as a learning space, which is, museum come in all shape and form, and how we learn in different way from one to the other is crucial. This is my own house. I felt like it's nice to see. I'm in Venice Beach, a tiny house around 400 square meters, 3 floor. I'm saying that is because, there's a sense of tinyness and a sense of Asian tropical in it. Very indoor, outdoor, you can see. I love water, so to be next to water is important. The whole house opened up almost like a beach house in a tiny way. It opened to, the street and other things. It's built mostly out of concrete, something very simple, but also playful. This part of the house itself. This is one project that we did. We started the project with our office 20 years ago. It was a pro bono project. We continued to work on it for 20 years and now finally almost complete. It's a bridge, a pedestrian bridge crossing the LA River. And when I went to see the bridge, I was very angry because the river itself became full of trash because that's how people treat the river. And so I felt I need to give this back to the people. You treat the river this way, I'm going to give trash back to you. And so I started to think about how to build a bridge out of trash. And so we start by creating this pour concrete. Many things I just saw at the design fair reflect me of these, the creative solution. Craft doesn't mean something in the past, an old material. Crafts will mean materials. In this case, even the recycle can be beautiful and meaningful as well. So we built this bridge out of its trash within the poor material, and we're able to create that. And people loved it because it's a way of understanding your history, from your grandfather's trash down here, your father's trash in the middle, and so there's a layer of living that come through the bridge as well as part of that component. The mock-up we have done. This is a museum in the Philippines where I just at, which is a new cultural center right on the river. Again, the idea of sense of place, live with nature is something very important to me. Component to that, again, not too much about design, but really about how the work has been engaged in. This is under construction, opening in 2 years. And this one, quickly, before I present to the main course, Priya Paul, is I felt like we should, this is we start with a pro bono, but now becoming a full project. We're redoing the museum at Lumpini, which is right now in Nepal, which is the birthplace of Buddha. So the idea, this is the old museum, which is designed by Kenzo Tange, who also did the master plan of the Lumpini Buddhist Park. So we renovated the museum, including adding new spaces for gathering, for learning together. And this is something that's ongoing as part of UNESCO collaboration, as well as supporting by World Bank and ADB. So this is part of that, just to talk about. The museum opened in the 60s and 70s and never really been used. And so a lot of effort going to renovating the historic structure that Kenzo Tange designed, and then built on that legacy to include more activities for peoples and other things as well. You can see that connection from the old to the new. That's part of that. This is part of a larger master plan that include the garden for the museums and other components as well. And that's it. So I'm here to talk about culture, and I look forward to our conversation about how we can help to flourish of culture and craft together. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all for the lovely introduction. And I just pressed one arrow? Okay. So thank you so much. After Kulapat's talk, I don't know what I'm going to add to that, but I'm looking forward to our conversation. And ever since I met him, we've been just talking and talking, so which is wonderful, and you'll see why when we interact. And I hope one day he will actually end up doing a museum here. So just a quick word about the company. Apeejay Surrendra Park Hotels owns and operates actually about 36 hotels as on date across India. We have about 5 decades of hospitality, over 5 decades of hospitality experience. And since the early 90s, we have really differentiated ourselves using art, design, fashion, food, and fun. So really creating hotels that are completely, as we call them, anything but ordinary, that curate culture, and it's always been about contemporary culture, whether it's, and taking that forward, whether it's through the art or music, dance, etc. So, and since the mid-90s, really 92, 93, I looked at how, and that time we had just 3 hotels, and I said, okay, fine, why can't we make them completely exciting and different and not the normal boring hotels of the 90s. So we've come a long way then, but today I'm really talking about how we've engaged with heritage and built architecture and heritage, and people don't really expect that of me and of the group. My interest, I would say my personal interest, began in the heritage space with the Jantar Mantar, which is located right across the park in New Delhi in the heart of Connaught Place, and I really wanted to, I looked at this out of my windows all the time, and it was not maintained. There was no lighting. It was like a little black blob after 6 o'clock in the evening. So from the early 90s, we started engaging with the ASI and the Ministry of Tourism with that. We've had a variety of, that's the site, and that's also the reason why I looked at it, because look at that picture with the park at the back. So for me, that's been a very important project. It's right in the heart of the city, and it's under the Adopt a Heritage program right now. So where we've done everything from the maintenance and the garden, and we are there as the custodians, and the lighting has happened, the interpretation center. So I think it's very important for not just a corporate, but also all of us to engage with this heritage that we have. It doesn't have to be 1,000 years old. It could be a building, it could be a colonial bungalow, but I think those are the things that we need to preserve and maintain while still taking it forward. So this is Jantar Mantar, and led to then an interest to look at spaces that we could convert and, adaptive reuse of heritage buildings into hospitality spaces. So this is part of something that I call the Park Collection, where we are really looking at 20 to 40 room small heritage properties which we can convert to make exciting and contemporary spaces. So the Denmark Tavern was probably India's first hotel in 1786. It's just north of Calcutta, and where the Danish East India Company set up their business and their churches and villas, etc. So this hotel operated from 1786. This is, you've seen these type of buildings all over India, especially in the south. And we're right on the Hooghly. But the feel is really this kind of Danish muted palette. We then have just opened 2 new hotels. Both are in, one is in Chettinad in South India, and the other one is in Patiala in Punjab. Chettinad, as most of you may know, is where the Chettiar traders built huge mansions, which were kind of, funded from the wealth that they created in Burma, Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and then, repatriated not just money, but also amazing goods, which was teak, mahogany, chandeliers, flooring. So they really imported the best from the world. So I think that globalization, this was happening almost 200 years ago. So when you come to a fair like this, you're seeing that cross exchange. It's really nothing that new, actually. So that's the exterior. It's very maximalist and, very different to what one knows of the park and our very contemporary modern aesthetic. But the rooms, we preserved a lot of the historical thing, added some interesting interventions like this lotus floor done in cement and concrete. And but the rooms have a palette which is, of course, very Tamil, and in terms of the colors and a lot of green and red. That is something that I love. It's called the Red Room, and it's meant to be the interior of a Burmese lacquer box. And it's completely saturated, and it's quite a beautiful place to sit in. That's a small poolside. Then we've just recently opened Ranbas, the Palace in Patiala. This is a very historic Sikh fort, and I think it opened in 1763. It's an 11-acre complex, and we have part of it where we've done 35 suites. This was an adaptive reuse space, still owned by the government of Punjab, but with us for a long time. And Abba Narayan Lamba, who spoke yesterday, has partnered with me for this. Very excited about it. It's really a architecture. You have the Sheesh Mahal. It's reflective of late Mughal, Sikh, and Rajput influences. There's a lot of Rajput painting, Rajput painters who painted here, because once the Mughal Empire started declining, they started moving out to all the stately homes and palaces across the country. That's one of the suites. We have 3-4 different categories. This one particularly has 274 miniature paintings lining the walls, which we are just starting the restoration of that. That's a more contemporary kind of space, and using motifs that are hand painted. The motifs are from the palace and different paintings in the palace, but this is let's say, a more contemporary rendition of it. That's one of the restaurants. That's our lounge bar, which is a homage to the Patiala Peg. So there are lots of music and dance, and I think my whole aim with this property is to really bring back Punjabiyat or Punjabi culture to Punjab. A lot of that has been lost, and over the next few months and years, that's what's we're working with a whole lot of people, from music to fashion to painting, to really bring back that pride in Punjabi culture, which is so pervasive in the rest of India, but we are not celebrating it at all. So that's what we're doing in the heritage space. I'm going to now hand it over to the organizers. so that we can continue the conversation. Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
it seems like we're working from culture from two different angles, right? I work with institutions, helping them representing culture, but you're really working with artists and integrate them into this heritage historic project. And I felt like, of course, we all know the Park Hotel from more modern, urban, somewhat, neutral, still stylish and modern. But these are the examples that are really amazing and make me think about how to approach these. And in the process of doing each of these, right, you talked about the sense of place, you talked about the artisans, you talked about really like flourishing the legacy, the sense of place, the pride. Walk us through the process.
I'm going to ask you the same question. But so I think, as you've done museums, and there's always a context, there's always the local space and place, and it has to, I think it has to nod to that. I don't think it necessarily, when you're doing a space, it has to be a very literal, okay, let's say I could have in Patiala, I could have done it exactly like it was in the 18th century or 17th century. I could have recreated a little mini Versailles, because that was the design influence. These Maharajas went, they bought French chandeliers and Austrian chandeliers and fabric. The furniture was all of that period, because that's, again, what they brought back in the ships. I could have done that, but that's not where I'm from, and and I think maybe because I'm not a designer and I'm not a thing, I can make some more radical decisions. And in fact, the conversation with Abha, the designers, said, please do. I don't want the recreation, and I want us to look further and further and look at different ideas. And that's why there are so many ideas. I could have edited them more, but but I didn't, because I'll tell you something, Kulapat, is that when a Maharaja built a palace, it would have built over some time, and they took influences from everywhere. Art and the culture and the craft, the painters came from somewhere else, the glass is from Aleppo, the woodwork was from Kashmir. There's so many different elements they brought in, and I think for me as a, let's say, editor and let's say the curator of the hotel, that's important for me also to bring in different elements which tell a story. Likewise, I mean, like when you do a museum.
It feels very fresh.
Thank you.
One thing we all understand is, that we are, in a way, a victim of heritage, right? Yes. Because heritage become a product that you sell to tourists, right? And keep fading down, and lower quality. Local people start to have a detachment against that, because that's no longer your life. That's someone else that you made in the past to sell to the tourists. Right? So how you bring that in using living artists, I think that's a very interesting point.
It's like when you're doing a museum, and I think a lot of your work has been recreating spaces and recreating museums and making them more, let's say, relevant to an audience. So I'm interested in, maybe tell us about what is that process. How do you approach, like, say, even the Louvre or the Met, and it's quite radical for them to do what they're doing. So how do you give that context? I know a lot of it is about exhibition design also, so I'd maybe like you to talk about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I still remember the first time I went to the Louvre when I was 7 years old, right? I remember how awe I was looking at these world civilization through, as a boy from Bangkok, so I understand that. But I also understand the intimidation that museums have, the idea of elite hierarchical that come with a museum experience. And so I position myself as a matchmaker. I'm a matchmaker between the artists and the art lovers, right? So my job is to really elevate the art experience to make it as uplifting and as true to the artistic mission. But I also want to make sure that the rooms, space are comfortable for people. People feel that they have options. They know their way around. They feel comfortable, like, oh, wow, this is a beautiful room. I want to be here, right? And then once they're comfortable, then they can explore. There's no need to tell them what to look at, what to learn. So I'm trying to kind of create that neutral encounter between the two, yeah.
And obviously, you've been doing it very successfully. But so, how much of technology do you use in this visitor experience, and the way we approach museums and the way we interact with objects has changed a lot. So, how much of technology is relevant for you? Is that part of your exhibition design? Where do you see that going in the next few years?
Thank you. Technology integration is the most important thing in museum design now, you know. But we also having the change of guards, right? The old curators hate it because they don't control it.
Yeah.
They don't know about it, and they don't want it because, just like changing of religion, you lose power when something come up, right? So the sense of tension there. So we need to do both. Funny because the same exact question came up in Singapore 3 days ago when I gave a talk at the Apple Summit. Like, how can technology be part of cultural world? I said, yes, it already is.
It is.
Every conversation I have in every museum in the world is about how do we integrate technology that allow us to be ourselves. That people not get lost in their phone, people not looking at the screen instead of the art object. I say, yes, that's a way. That's where design comes in, right? And tool is not guilty on its own. If you have discipline, if you have a way of deploying and really balancing it. But technology, so everything that you've seen have heavy technology integration, different ways, from even AI level, and of course immersive experience, from providing kind of for visitors, right? So one thing maybe I can leave with you, which is the most important thing, is that when you come to a museum, instead of like, oh, this is what you should learn about, they would start with like, what do you want to know? Right? I mean, people like to know things that curators hate to tell, like how much is that painting, right? I mean, even ask most of the people, that's what they want to know. How much is this thing, right? So let's get out of the way. If they want to know that, let them know it. It's like, well, and which AI do, right? People look at that and say, well, how much is this Van Gogh? It's like, well, the similar one that went to auction and went to 200 million. And it was like, oh, wow, now I get it, right? That perspective because then, it's like, it's okay to talk about these things, yeah.
And do they look more when there's more value? I'm curious to see if that works.
I think it allowed them to own the experience.
Yeah.
Right? I think when you watch, even at the design fair, right, people are so active because they can talk about things, they can look at, if they want to know how process is, they can. They don't get shushed all the time, like in a museum, right? Especially for children. It's a very limiting experience when you go into a museum. You're not allowed to talk, you're not even allowed to do anything. So like, it's so how you make it something that more liberating. So that's part of that. And one thing that I always talk to my museum clients, we're moving museum from temple to museum as cultural playground.
Absolutely.
And because playground doesn't have hierarchy, you can go back every time, you play different ways, and you kind of choose your own journey. So we're working very hard with all these historic museums to really turn that around, to allow visitors to own and plan their own experiences.
So I know this is not your first time in India, and you've been to visit some of the museums here. If you could tell them, and I know you went to the National Museum yesterday, which is yet to be a playground. What would you prescribe, or can we prescribe something? Because I think all of us want to change our museums. There are a lot of private museums that are coming up. There's MAP in Bangalore. There are private museums in Jaipur. And there's an outstanding Government of Bihar museum that I went to, which is designed by Maki, the Japanese architect. Stunning. You would exactly like this, engaging with audiences of all types. So how would you change our Indian museums?
Well, I think India has a problem that you have so many good stuff, right? Everyone take it for granted that, oh, of course, we have sculptures, we have things, we have other things, right? I think, the same Indian materials display, at the Gimei, at the Met is done because, it's rarer for them, right? So in this case, I think the highlighting of what that culture is about, putting yourself in the third person to really tell that story. I think a lot of time, especially when you have such a rich, you're crowd of civilization, right? You're like, I don't even know where to start. There's so many stories to tell about Indian civilization. I think if there's a way to really focus on a few stories, allow people to get in, right? Of course, there's a history part of it, but the other part which is interesting is the artistic achievement. Like, why is this sculpture different than that one? Why is this so, so that allows people to kind of have an entry point. Because when you go to like the National Museum, it's so overwhelming. Like everyone looks exactly the same, right? There's no entry point. If you get someone an entry point, it's like, okay, you look at this first, and once you understand this, then that object becomes the ambassador for you to see other things, right? So that's something that the narrative and the hardware, which is the architecture, and the software, which is the experience design, need to go together. A lot of time, people just design the building and not thinking about the inside.
Absolutely.
Or sometimes the inside is great, but in a shitty building, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's, complicated. So the two had to go hand in hand.
So today we walked around the fair, and the whole idea was to show you some Indian traditional craft, as well as craft that's used in objects and furniture, and we haven't had time to finish the whole thing. We could do that afterwards. So what do you think? Where's India at, you think, on a global scale? Do you think we can take Indian craft and Indian objects globally? And if so, we would love to have your thoughts on that, since you're the globetrotter.
100%.
Yes.
100%,
yes, okay.
So there's so much creativity, there's so much playfulness and creation that has lived on through centuries, right? So without a doubt, you have the goods. But India has the same problem with some other countries, which is it's big enough that you never have to look outside, right? Funny as it is, because I was talking to a very successful businessman in Japan, and he was comparing between Japan and Korea, right? Japan never look outside, 120 million, I mean, nothing compared to India, but Japan only make things for Japanese, right? They never think that their invention will actually be a good thing for outside, because they don't even know who the outsides are, right? So they keep building it, but because of the abstraction, the refinement, the achievement, they bring it up to a level that become admired, but it's still admired as a Japanese thing. Right? It's not a universal thing. It has a very strong Japanese DNA. Korea is only 40 million. Korea from the beginning always look outside. Korea never make anything just for Koreans. Korean always look at China, look at America and other things. And of course, in the beginning, I remember, everything in Korea looked like a copy from Japan like 30 years ago. And now see how far it came. Because how you, in a way, you look your consumers in the eyes and say, I'm going to get you. I understand who you are, whereas the Japanese are kind of building their own unspoken understanding of themselves.
No, and I think it's also now that Korea is more confident of themselves, and people, I mean, India is full of K-pop and Korean beauty. You'd be amazed, with that. So I loved your analogy of sushi and pad thai. And I'm not going to say which I prefer, but I want to know about your practice, and how do you bring, you're very minimalist, you work with Tadao, Anda, which is, like amazing. When does the pad thai come into your practice, or are you ever going to mix and match? Because you're Thai, you're proud of your culture, and you said that the more you spend time out, as all of us do, you appreciate your own culture. You were just at the Biennale also, we talked about that. So, is that ever going to be a pad thai in your work?
It always is. And the reason why I went to Japan for study and work is, when I was in Thailand, I realized that I cannot learn from the West because we have different problems. The problems that I was trying to solve is what is the ideal situation for Thai architecture? Because when I was growing up, the buildings around me are office buildings and hotels that look like they copy from Houston. Right, so I felt like this doesn't fit our climate. This is fit our way of living. We want to sit on the floor, all these issues make me think. And then I realized, okay, I have to learn from countries that are similar, have similar problems. So I was looking at India, Japan, Mexico, and Brazil. Right, these are places with amazing architects who I admire, and then in turn they make their own problems and become international architectural language that inform everyone. Right. I mean, we look at all of these. And so that's when I went to Japan. But after 15 years in Japan, I realized that the culture has excellence, but I also see some of the sacrifices they have to make.
Yes.
Right. I mean, like the sushi, which is great, but, but if you can eat one thing for the rest of your life, would you eat sushi or you eat pad Thai? Perhaps pad Thai
Perhaps.
because it's more flexibility,
Yes.
right? Maybe people might say sushi, which is okay too. No, but because of that, that's when I moved to the U.S. because I felt like I need to blend this, and there's no other place better than the U.S. as a kind of testing ground. As an immigrant, it gave opportunities comparing to Europe. So from the beginning, I was liking the idea. Maybe it's not fully pad Thai, but the idea of really trying to combine the rigor that comes from clarity in the Japanese thinking, but with this eccentric kind of spontaneity, fun smells, which come from our part of the
No, it's from
world.
our part of the world.
And I like it because when I was in Japan, funny as it is, like towards the end of my stay, which is 2003, 2004, I feel like nothing smells here, right? You're in this world which is so beautiful and serene, but I miss the smells. I miss the flavor. I miss the
Spice.
human stain almost,
Yeah.
right? Which is not allowed to exist within this pristine kind of world. So I'm kind of trying to balance that. Not that I want to completely go the other way, but to bring the human quality to it, bring life to it, which is something that can look messy, but I think it's a balance, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we please have a big round of applause? Thank you.